Hello and welcome to the Raw Preview. I'm Michael Sidgwick and I'm joined by Adam Nicholas and Andy Murray from WhatCulture.com to discuss everything that's in store for us ahead of tonight's Monday Night Raw. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. We preview and review Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, pay-per-views, we hold wrestler interviews, and we have a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. Now, gents, we are gathered. I'm not doing this bollocks catchphrase at all. Are you guys psyched, or are you guys psyched to watch what is now in canon the worst show in WWE tonight in Monday Night Raw?
I'm more psyched that you've just nailed that intro. Absolutely
First attempt.
Nailed it. Top bomber.
Good stuff.
Get it. Yes, psyched. Are you psyched, Andy Murray?
Yeah, I can't wait to watch a show that only got one win last night after getting 6 or whatever it was last year in Clean 2. And yeah, I mean, like, I look forward to every episode of Raw in the same way. Some of it's going to be mint, some of it's going to be so bad it's hilarious, and some of it is going to be like SmackDown, boring. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun little variety show. I love sitting there with my double speed. I love fast forwarding through the boring bits. I love watching the Rusev and Lana segments because they're the best, and I enjoy the odd banger with Ricochet or Drew McIntyre, and I can't wait to see the fallout from Survivor Series.
Please don't do the voice. Now, as we saw from last night's Survivor Series, Raw really got its dick pounded into the dirt. How does it recover specifically, or do they do what they did with SmackDown last year and just go, not bothered, lol?
It's definitely not bothered, lol.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. They've obviously showcased the two brands they're trying to really push, which is not a bad idea, I think. I guess it just depends on where you stand with Monday Night Raw. Not a whole load of enthusiasm, to say the least, going into tonight's episode, because you're like, well, why would I watch that? Well,
You'll suck.
It's really, like, it's hard enough to watch all this wrestling to begin with, and we've got backstage who have the audacity to put a show on the night after. I think we'll just put it on the site, shall we?
Yeah. Just
We've got a review it for work. Okay, fair enough.
I wonder if maybe there'll be a couple of big developments on this show, though, you know? Like the way the show ended with Shayna Baszler, it looked like, oh, cool, she's going to be celebrating as the show goes off the air. Oh, no, Becky's got to get her heat back. Maybe they're going to continue that, maybe, in a good world. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll do something interesting with Seth, because he kind of looked like a bit of a...
Seems like an oxymoron to me.
Well, he looked like a bit of a bish in that Survivor Series finish, didn't he? Yeah, I'm going to burn you down, Keith Lee. No, pinned. It was pretty funny.
It was so cathartic. Oh,
but there are places you can kind of take those two characters, so it might be interesting to see if anything happens from that.
Indeed, I'm expecting some kind of reset. No, I'm just kidding. They're going to actually prolong this invasion wildcard stuff, in my opinion, but we will get to that. Now, additionally, conspicuous by the absence on Survivor Series of this program was the Rusev, Lashley, Lana love triangle. Now, clearly, it wasn't brand warfare, capital letters, !1. So they didn't have any time for it on Survivor Series. Are we expecting the match tonight?
You'd imagine they're going to go back to it like it just never skipped a heartbeat, and you love it.
It's the
as
best.
long as someone likes it, that's what this is all about. A show that caters to everyone.
But how can you have a match when there's a restraining order in play? Unless, you know, they're 90 yards or 90 miles or whatever Lana said
Such
last
a
week.
gimmick, 90 miles, just like...
What?
The size of Lashley's cock, remember? Because she likes it hard and deep. I'm surprised they haven't done a gag about that. Yes. Maybe it's because I've got a twisted sense of humour. Now, there is one workaround for this. They could just get Lana to go away and the two wrestlers could have a wrestling match. Is that not on the cards?
Let the wrestlers wrestle. Yeah, I guess, but that wouldn't be much fun, would it?
How will we know the value of the woman, Michael Sidgwick? In WWE's eyes, this is it. That's the thing. It's...
Talking seriously now, and by that I mean being totally flippant.
Of course.
What soap opera scenario can you guys see coming up?
Shark cage 90 yards above the ring. That's what it is. Like, that's the only solution. Goodness, we've already
She'll be up there with the top.
Hey, we've already done the fake pregnancy thing. So how about we do a real pregnancy thing now?
We'll just have Lashley shoot, shag Lana.
Yeah, why not?
Properly does it.
Why not? Bobby Lashley shags CJ Perry. I think that's what the marriage certificate thing, divorce thing said on Raw last week. Because screw kayfabe, right? I don't know, man.
Incredible
like,
seeds.
how do you come up with the crap that they're coming up with? How do you come up with the brain farts that escape this team every week? It's genius.
You simply think of the worst case scenario.
All right, so an actual baby then, yeah.
They go one better, don't they? They always go one better. You say it and you found the basement. You're like, all right, worst case scenario tonight, this is going to be it.
Yes.
And then they go, Well, you haven't seen this trap door yet, pal. Hey, what's in there? Look
It's
at
the
that.
Fiend.
It's something terrible. The Fiend, dragging Rollins to hell. Leave him down there for me, pal. I would say that, to be honest, they must have had a lease on those shark cages back in the day when they had Amore in the shark cage, they had
Paul
Authors of
Ellery.
Pain, they had Ellsworth. Maybe they've still got a year left on the lease, so why not just,
Bring
chuck
it
it up
back.
there one last time and hope it...
How sorry to interrupt you, but how high do you think Judy Bagwell's forklift can get? Do you reckon that's a good 90?
Oh,
Good
God.
90?
No, to be honest, right, if they were going to try... They've already gone stupid, right? They've
Yes.
gone stupid. Why not? Like, honestly, if you want... They've brought the DX tank back, so why not just keep dipping in and going, well, let's pay homage in this little way. Oh, we'll bring that forklift back. Everyone loved it the first time. Why not?
Your use of the word tank brings an idea into my head. Rusev claims to have shagged Lana on the tank at WrestleMania
Yes.
31. Why doesn't Bobby Lashley shag Lana on the tank? Revenge sex.
Can we get like a camera in the tank? Like, having a weird little comfort. I'd be into that, watching that, definitely.
You know who probably doesn't get much work? Dr. Shelby. Why not do some good old fashioned?
Why are you doing this? Don't breathe this into the air, because they'll come back.
Well, why not have some relationship counselling? I think there's still some life in that old flame yet.
Yeah, I think. Let's try and reignite the old burning embers.
Don't care. Right, moving on to the next point. WWE haven't even begun to script this show, so there isn't a Raw preview, so I'm making this up by the seat of my pants. Right.
Fitting.
We got a very rare thing on Survivor Series last night. We got meeting one on a pay-per-view with surely a definitive outcome. Brock Lesnar beat what turned into a glorified handicap match against Ray and
Dirty Dom.
Dominic Mysterio.
T-Dom.
That was decisive enough for me. It felt like they've drawn a line under this storyline. The actual match itself wasn't perfectly to my taste, but I will give WWE due credit. They've plotted a long-term storyline very well. The match was germane to that storyline, and they seem to have concluded it. My question to you fellas is, what next for Brock Lesnar?
He's going to defend the belt in a continuation of the brand warfare storyline against Keith Lee, who broke out at Survivor Series, and they're going to have an awesome match on TLC, and it's going to go 4 3/4 stars, and it's going to be the main roster match of the year. And now I'm going to wake up
There
from
you
my
go.
dream world.
There he is.
Seth Rollins is going to burn it down.
No.
Lesnar. I don't know, man. I don't know. The thing is, like, if you sit there and look at a list of competitors, there's no obvious number one contender, right? Maybe a guy like a Drew or someone, perhaps?
Well, what I did before I get to you, Adam Nicholas, sorry to interrupt, is I went on WWE.com's roster page, research, and through the process of elimination, I went through every babyface, because I don't really do heel versus heel programs, and went through that babyface roster on Raw that either isn't Seth Rollins, one, out of just sheer wish fulfillment, and two, they've done it twice this year. I just can't see them doing it again. So from the process of elimination, looking at baby faces he hasn't faced this year and who aren't otherwise engaged in storylines, I came up with literally one guy, actually two guys, but they're both kind of engaged in storylines. Ricochet, who seems to be facing a confrontation with Randy Orton, and Aleister Black, who seems to be ready for a match with Buddy Murphy. I literally couldn't think of any other baby faces, which leads me to believe that he's just going to piss off until January.
Oh, like 100%.
Yeah.
Like, what you got to stay around for? Realistically, in Brock's terms, he's done one of his big 4 commitments. He doesn't like the smaller pay-per-views unless he has to, unless he's off to Saudi Arabia to make that dollar bill. What's he going to do? I would be amazed if we see him. Amazed.
Yeah.
Not
I
e-
would shelve him.
Not even for a gloating promo.
Yeah, it could be good stuff, but I mean, like you say, there's no like you sit there and have a promo, but to what end? It's like fill 5 minutes of cool airtime, unless
They would never do that.
No, exactly.
No. I mean, to be fair, speaking of filling the air, but just put Paul Heyman on, won't they?
Aye.
Have Paul Heyman talk for however long. They don't need Brock there.
Yeah.
My client is not here tonight because he doesn't care. Like, that's literally it.
Yeah,
So,
he's
I mean,
counting his money,
Yeah.
your money.
Speaking of filling air, we've got a bit of time. What next in January, maybe, if he does piss off until then? Who would you book against Brock Lesnar?
Who would I want, or who are they going to give us? I guess
Maybe both?
Bit of both. Well, to be honest, hearing that Vince is big on Keith Lee, Andy Murray's already started. I think that's too early to talk about that. But that is definitely something I'd be interested in. I've also said, Big Steve, if you're watching, Big Austin there, saying he's got one more match left in him.
Big
if you
Steve.
really,
Don't
really...
say that. They'll rename him Big
This is
Steve.
Big Steve and Shorty G. What a tag team that would be.
Oh, don't.
He's got to come back, and he's got to have, if he's going to have one match, it's not going to happen. But let's just say it. I've already told you this. My money, Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold, match that never happened. Let's make sure Austin can really never wrestle again and put him in there with Brock Lesnar.
I'm choosing to believe that the recent story about Sin Cara requesting his release was a work, and he will indeed be facing Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble.
Right, okay, that's a load of bollocks.
Good.
Thanks for not being
What about
flippant.
you? What about you, Michael Sidgwick?
This is criminally uncreative, right?
That's okay. That's
Is it even more uncreative than Sin Cara?
It's better. It's not quite just totally taking the piss out of this podcast. On the basis that when there's not much sports entertainment dressing, kind of undermining things, which in my opinion happened last night, Brock Lesnar clearly always works best against smaller, more agile, more athletic, more plucky baby faces. For me, they've already normalized Ricochet to a kind of a drastic degree, and yet in that match, that 5-on-5-on-5 men's match, that I thought was totally exhilarating, completely in spite of itself and its weird booking mentality, I thought Ricochet looked razor sharp in that match. Surely, like a nice little 12-minute pay-per-view match at the Royal Rumble would be a magnificent showcase of what he can actually do. If nothing else, just book it as a test of his actual headliner credentials. Because I've not really heard him talk that often. I think he could really benefit from the platform of an actual verbose, top-level Raw feud to work out one way or the other if they think he's got it or not. Because surely the match would be great.
Yeah, you'd think so. And like if you look at Brock's booking patterns at the past couple of Royal Rumbles, they tend to kind of just throw something random together, right? We had the awesome Balor match last year, which was like not getting talked about enough.
No, I agree with that.
When it comes to like match of the year discussions and stuff, like the stuff with like attacking the abdomen, so good. And we also had the stupid Braun and Kane thing that also happened to have Brock for some reason the year before. So yeah, they generally just throw something together. Whether or not it's pretty cool, Balor, or ridiculous nonsense, Braun and Kane remains to be seen. But I could absolutely see them going for a Ricochet.
It just seems like a very easy thing for them to do, because if Ricochet loses that match, it's an expected development, but he's such a great worker that he could probably convince you otherwise throughout the course of the match. His stature is enhanced in defeat. It just seems like an open goal, and when do they miss those?
Yeah, when do they put them in? Never. Ricochet's thing is, of course, like Styles, like everybody else of that nature, when he's gonna sell like crazy. Brock Lesnar could throw him around like mad, but Ricochet, he could bring that. I'd like to see that combo of the two. His ridiculous, like, defying gravity stuff and Brock Lesnar. How much he could banter that off. Just imagine Brock Lesnar, like, he's doing all these flips and he just strong arms him out the ring. And it's like, it's prime Brock. But I do wonder if maybe they've done that match now quite a bit. So, like, and the patterns might suggest it might go big, stupid match, little guy match, big, stupid match we could be set for. I mean, I know people aren't so hot on him these days, and you kind of want to go to a guy who's, I'm thinking size for size with Brock these days, but you want to... How many did they actually have who you'd be willing to watch have that big hoss match with him in WWE? Because, like, other than going through the little guys, and we ultimately know there's not going to be a win. I mean, the match last night, I genuinely thought, if Mysterio had won last night after the way it developed, I thought that would have been a nice payoff to the way the story had gone. Like, the perfect karmic justice, essentially. Everybody got what they wanted and they got the end resolution, but obviously we didn't get that. I wonder how many times you're going to get that match where is it eventually going to wear thin? I don't know.
Potentially. Right, next course of business. This next point feeds into the point after it, and this has all got me very concerned on a basis of, like, what is going to become of NXT. But before we go to the macro, let's discuss the micro. Whose side is Kevin Owens on?
In my dream world, which is rubbish, he's going to be back in Full Sail full time, I would hope, forever. That pop is enough of a litmus test to me to say that's where he belongs. And the version of himself that he gave us all at NXT TakeOver War Games, that's the Kevin Owens I signed up for back in the day. The parallels between watching that entrance and his very first entrance in NXT, it's like staggering. Like, you can see how much it means to him, how passionate he is. He had that aggression that he doesn't normally have these days. But ultimately, I think he's going to end up back on Raw, unfortunately. I think last night would have been a good indicator if they decided to advance that any further, but immediately black and red top on, red armband, and off he goes. Although I did kind of like the touch that Ciampa was the one who put him out the match in that weird sort of
There was one moment in the match where he sort of had a conflict in his head over where to land the frog splash, which made me think either one or two things. One, he's just so careful about his character, and it's an attention to detail he himself has put into the match to reward the intelligence and the interest of the viewers. But equally, they could really be plotting something. Who knows? Andy Murray, what are your thoughts?
I was actually a bit disappointed with how things went down at Survivor Series getting pinned by Tommy, because I thought, and this is all headcanon nonsense, but I thought coming out of TakeOver, they could have done a really cool thing to totally reboot the whole Stone Cold-esque thing he was doing before Shane McMahon. Before that feud went on for about 3 months too long. They could have really rebooted that by casting him as the unwanted man who is stuck on Raw but feels a kinship with NXT because of his past, indulged in it at TakeOver. But because this brand split exists, he's stuck on Raw, and he has to play this anti-hero, playing to the fans' tastes, kicking against the Raw hierarchy. But it looks like they've done away with all of that, and it's a real shame, because I think that would have been a really great way to reboot what was, for me, the hottest version of Kevin Owens' character in years. Now I think that the whole thing is probably just going to all be forgotten about, and Kevin Owens will go back to being a occasionally featured wrestler who we all love, but ultimately doesn't make many steps up the card on Raw, where he just farts around in the mid-card.
That sounds like the most probable but grim scenario.
Yep.
If I'm putting my optimistic hat on, and I don't have it, it was telling to me that Ciampa, after selecting Kevin Owens to be on his team, stole the pin. Now, this could just be the usual worlds collide and infect each other with nonsense stuff that we've seen in this brand warfare build, but could it not foresee a scenario where, following his victory over Matt Riddle at TakeOver, that puts Finn Balor in the conversation to go up against Adam Cole in the main storyline of NXT going forward, leaving Tommaso Ciampa and now Kevin Owens, who he's in conflict with, for a number one contenders battle. Could you see that coming?
I could, but I don't think they have the nuance to be able to write something as compelling as that.
That's the thing, that they seem to foreshadow it, but they don't know what foreshadowing means, so I can't really let them get away with it.
I think you're right in saying how much of it goes down to the performers and how much of it is actually what they've had communicated to them, because we know they're smart, the guys like Owens. They think about these things long term. The only thing I would say that might knock that theory is obviously Ciampa was the one who got the pin at War Games on Cole, which essentially I feel like they've done that so you can say, I'm in the driving seat now, I won, I want that title shot against Adam Cole. Not that I'd be against it. I think that would be such a great little... If they could do Kevin Owens having a storyline on NXT and doing stuff on Raw at the same time, I'd be...
Marvellous.
That would be like a nice middle ground, I guess. Might not get exactly what we want, but you get a middle ground.
It's funny that you said that, because it segues to my next and final point. Have we actually seen the end of brand warfare here? Because Andy Murray, you pointed out that Kevin Owens is going to be stuck on Raw. But the question I have is based on the fact that this Survivor Series build, in spite of how illogical it has been, it generated a kind of a monster rating after the FS1 debacle anyway on SmackDown. And that's kind of steadied at about 2.6. We know that on the strength of the brand warfare storyline, Becky Lynch primarily drove the first NXT ratings win over AEW, which WWE seems very intent on focusing on. We've heard reports that Vince McMahon is variously high on Shayna Baszler, which could theoretically manifest as a main roster call-up, even though we're going to have to come up with a new name for that, apparently, because NXT is officially better than Raw and SmackDown, and AEW, if you didn't quite catch the subtext of what last night's event all was. In addition, we've heard that... reported by, I think, Dave Meltzer, that Keith Lee has completely endeared himself to Vince McMahon. Do you think the events of Survivor Series have opened up a new chest of toys for Vince McMahon to play with, and he's going to play havoc with our hearts with a nightmare of continuity and him just infecting NXT? It just feels to me like everything I know about Vince, his new toys fetish, his quest to defeat AEW at the detriment, looking at Raw, of his own product, that he's just not going to be able to close the door on the events of last night, and we are going to see some kind of continuation of the wildcard rule.
You've talked me into a yes here. I was getting ready to sit down and go, no, Triple H respects what NXT is a little bit too much, and it ultimately doesn't matter in the end, does it? Because Papa Vince is the one pulling the strings, and he's going to be the one to make these changes, regardless of what his nice little son-in-law Papa H thinks. if they are really that driven and they are that focused towards beating AEW and above all else, then I can absolutely see that happening, because they're going to look at last week's show as evidence. What was it, a 17,000 margin, something like that, as evidence that this thing works, and yada, yada, yada. It's... I think you should be concerned about that if you're an NXT fan. I think you should be really quite worried about your nice little niche bespoke wrestling product basically being infected by the same people that are on the main roster. Not that these are bad performers, not that they're not worthy of spotlights and praise and all this stuff. You've just got to ask yourself, what is it that differentiates NXT when the personnel becomes the same? Because you take your black and gold shades off a second and you sit and you look at the NXT, the way things are plotted and planned, and objectively, it's very similar to the main roster. The difference is they don't have cucking storylines and people destroying each other's cars, although a guy did set fire to a sofa the other week, so I guess it's not that far off. But these are already remarkably similar products, much more similar than anyone really wants to admit.
The week-to-week element is worrying for me as well.
It is.
What do you think, Adam Nicholas? Are you scared that we're going to see the wild card rear its ugly head?
I don't necessarily know if it's the wild card. I mean, I can understand.
They'll come up with a new name for it.
Yes, I can understand why.
And it'll be the exact same goddamn thing.
Yeah, I'll. Do you want me to go now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's it.
I'll have my tea.
Whatever.
Turmeric tea I've got.
And here he goes again. I'll wait. Just hang on. You good? He's good. There we go. I would honestly say I can understand the viewpoint, to be fair, on the NXT stuff, because it's Vince, isn't it? And he's noticed this, and his wild drive to be competing with AEW. I don't think they've played it down, but it was never gonna he was never gonna be able to be a bystander in that happening, was he? He was always gonna want that to be the product. That's been reflected in the victory at Survivor Series, I think, and he wants to invest his time, his energies, his interest into helping that along, because ultimately it'll be his great idea that ended up bringing that back. If it keeps Vince motivated, a motivated Vince McMahon isn't a terrible thing. Like that, the attitude era
Every Vince McMahon's a terrible thing.
Yeah, but ultimately the least bad one is.
Yeah, this is true.
That's what we're aiming for here with Vince McMahon, and I think the attitude era. Well, if you look at it over the course, there's highs and lows. It was class for a lot of it because of a motivated Vince trying to beat and get the ratings to beat the other product. I think the problem we have is that they run the risk of, like Murray says, if you just keep rotating and bringing these people down, then eventually it's just an extension of Raw, or it's just an extension of SmackDown. So far, other than last week, which kind of fit the brand warfare thing, I guess, which everyone just looked at that as it's just a mad episode. It was 2 hours of wild fan fiction, essentially, just chuck it all in. I would say there's a way to do it where it doesn't have to become that. Like if they picked, say, for example, we'll go with Owens because we've already used him. He's the one. And for a month, 2 months, Owens is pretty much the only guy you've got coming down from the main roster and having that feud or whatever he's doing and then disappears. That model might work. I think there is, though, definitely a worry. If you're an NXT fan like I am, I think Vince's motivation to try and dethrone AEW week after week after week could see more and more of this happening, which, as you say, it might end up losing its brand.
There you have it. NXT is dead. Helpfully, that can be the title of this video. Now, I'd like to extend my thanks to Nicholas and Murray for helping with me. You can follow them both on Twitter at
It's Adam Nicholas for me.
At Andy H. Murray, the H stands for haven't thought of one.
Hey.
You're getting worse
You're
at
getting
these.
lazy. You didn't have one this morning.
you should,
I'd go home in an hour, man. Been up since 4. Go
you
to
should
bed.
prepare a list of H's, in my opinion.
Knock them off.
Anyway, you can follow us all.
Just cross them out as you go along. It's easy.
How about honk? There we go. That'll do.
Indeed. You can follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I've been Michael Sidgwick. This has been the Raw Preview, and we will see you soon.